Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, welcome to the RTE GA podcast. Mikey Stafford standing in for Jackie Hurley again, joined by Rory O'Neill, and delighted to say former Offaly footballer Nigel Dunne joins us for his RTE GA podcast debut. How are you doing, Nigel?
Not too bad. I thought my days of debuts were gone, but yeah, no, this is a delight to be here, and thanks for having me.
There's always a debut somewhere, Nigel.
How does that fit with you, the former Offaly footballer Nigel Dunne? You've come to terms with it. Obviously, you had a practice retirement there a few years ago, so this is the real deal this time, isn't it?
I've had a few practice runs at it, Mikey. No, do you know what? It sits very easily with me. There's a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, and that in itself tells me that it was the right thing at the right time. And I've been told I'm walking around at home a lot happier, a lot smilier. So no, I'm very comfortable and content with my decision. To be honest, I probably went 6 or 8 months too long, and I was being really selfish with that. But I'm delighted now. I'd like to say I have more free time, but I don't. I'm coaching the Offaly minor team. We had a great win last night, so I could be a bit hoarse.
Into a Leinster final, Nigel, huh?
Leinster final, but to be honest, Rory, we're only trying to stop the juggernaut that has Louth football now.
It is a juggernaut. Yeah.
I don't know what we're going to do. Can we split Louth in two?
Yeah. I was saying to Rory last night, Nigel, all it took for Louth football to dominate Leinster was for Dundalk to get relegated to the first division. That's it. It's done it for them now. Well, your horse from shouting, and I sound like James Earl Jones because I'm sick, so we're a fine pair between us. I suppose just a quick word on your own retirement then, Nigel. What was it? One specific injury or physical problem you had, or was it just that affliction that we call old age?
Well, it was definitely old age, Mikey. But you know what it was? There was not one serious injury. I've had a build up over the last few years of tendonitis in my right ankle and right glute, and the main thing for me was I wasn't getting to recover between trainings. I was in agony. I was shamefully constantly taking painkillers just to get through a session, and it was a bad example to set for younger players, even for my own kids and stuff. So it didn't sit well with me. There was a lot of guilt with all of that, and I just wanted it to stop. I'm trying to play a bit with the club at the moment, but even that, I'll do a club session and then I'll be sore for 3 or 4 days. So look, the body's not able for that level anymore. You can't bluff at that level. You can't try and pull the wool over people's eyes, and that's what I've been doing for probably 6 or 7 months at this stage.
Yeah, there's a few things about your date of retirement that strike me. Firstly, you joined the panel in 2010. You're leaving in 2025. Your career, like Paul Mannion's and Brian Fenton's, took place entirely during Dublin's dominance. Once Dublin got knocked out, you're like, nah, lads, I can't play the Ulster Championship if Dublin aren't going to win it. It's not for me.
No, and between myself, Paul, and Brian, we've a bag load of All Ireland. So
And then the other thing, I suppose, is like you're stepping away, having been like, you know, a shining light for Offaly football through some dark days. You're stepping away now when things are really looking up. Like I'm friendly with a guy who's involved with the Wicklow backroom team, and I said to him today, "Who have you got in the Tailteann this weekend?" And he said Offaly, and I said away, and he said yeah, and he made a kind of face, like a grimace, as in, you don't want to be going away to Tullamore to play Offaly anymore. And like, best will in the world, even people involved with Wicklow 3 or 4 years ago wouldn't be making that face. There's a different attitude to Offaly football now, isn't there?
No, there is. And you know what, Mikey? I genuinely believe, like, I'm not saying we'll win the Tailteann Cup, but in my head and in my heart, I've made peace with the fact that there's a real likelihood I'm turning my back on a Tailteann Cup medal, because I expect Offaly to challenge deep into it. And like, Wicklow are probably rightfully kind of weary of going to Tullamore, but that being said, history would suggest that we haven't embraced the second tier competitions too well. So no, Offaly football is on the cusp of something good. There's the group that won the 20 All Ireland in 2021 are now starting to mature and blossom, and you can see the Cormac Egan's and the Keith O'Neills really lighting it up, and they're only going to get better. They're so young, lads, and they're so good. It's actually hard to quantify how good they are, and they're going to have 5 or 6 years now to make hay, and I pray to God that they do it, because they're great lads and they're great ambassadors for our county.
And then the other thing I suppose which make you wonder, like, damn, why wasn't I born 5 years later? You must think, what do you make of the new rules? And like, obviously it would have suited a forward like yourself. You only got a few brief glimpses of them, I suppose, in action because you're limited in terms of how much you played this year. But what do you make of them? Are you happy with all of them? Are there any you wouldn't be so happy with?
No, no, I genuinely, I think Jim Gavin is possibly the greatest manager that's ever lived, and yet I think his greatest achievement is overseeing the introduction of these rules. I think it's transformed our game. It's made Gaelic football people proud of the product.
Yeah.
I think it's massive, and like what we're seeing now is a far more exciting, spectator-friendly sport. It's unbelievable, really. It gives the underdogs a chance. It's more traditional, but yet we're not losing sight of the modern qualities. I am 100% full-blown believer in the new rules, and I know Eamon does be on here a lot. And when you have brilliant minds like Eamon Fitzmaurice and Jim Gavin overseeing it, I suppose we shouldn't be surprised that what they've come up with is so good. Is there little tweaks? Potentially, but 99.9% of it, I think, has made the game an amazing spectacle.
Absolutely. You're here.
Here
Okay.
is right.
Speaking of amazing spectacles, so Rory, we'll move on to we'll go chronologically, I suppose. We've two senior games to discuss. Donegal Armagh, Clones, a sellout, unsurprisingly, 5:25 Saturday, live on RTE. This is probably the Ulster final most people expected and wanted, Rory, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, look at what happened last year. That's I suppose, your reference point. And a game played under the old rules, and it was still incredible. For a game to go for the distance, go to extra time, go to a penalty shootout. There's every chance you could see the same again. There's so little between the two teams, and there's so little between how both teams have embraced it. Now they're playing slightly differently, but slightly the same as well at the same time. They both, like, if you look at the package that both of them bring to the table, iconic managers with an incredible track record of delivering. They've both got top class goalkeepers, which you now need because possession now has become more of a lottery, thankfully, as a result of the rules. They both have extremely good midfields, really athletic, superbly fit, deep panels, plenty of players to pick from if the game goes into the melting pot and lads to call from the bench, quality forwards up front. It's just, look, it's the only, no, it's not actually, I suppose Connacht had two Division 1 teams in it as well, but this is a provincial final with two All-Ireland contenders in it. That's probably the way I'd frame it, and impossible to call for me anyway.
Yeah. Nigel, yeah, I suppose Roy mentioned the keepers, and we might as well start at that end of the field. There's probably not two better goalkeepers at the moment on kickouts than the two lads.
No,
Sean Patton
yeah,
obviously
no,
could kick the ball a mile, and his opposite number, Rafferty, is more kind of down to accuracy and kind of the flight path of the ball. But between them, you wouldn't say no to either of them, put it that way. But it's interesting that they have different ways of being so good at kickouts.
look, their team's nearly most important players, and they play the position in a completely different style to each other. I think what's funny about this game Saturday evening is there's obviously the Ulster final is very prestigious, and there's going to be a massive energy in Clones from the spectators and the wider public. But I actually think these two teams, when the energy of a crowd, the game can kind of get frantic and everyone's kind of engaged in it together. I actually think that Donegal and Armagh are so structured in their setup that they're mature enough to, the energy might be high, but they're going to keep it very structured, and they're still going to play like Rory said at the top. I don't think they're going to play too much differently or embrace the new rules too much. There'll still be a lot of possession, a lot of slow plays. The 2-point shots will obviously be a factor, but I think both these teams will be similar patterns to what we've seen the last few years, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see extra time of penalties again.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But Roy, there are, for both teams, there are absolutely game breakers all over the field here, from the full back line. Like, literally, you've got cornerbacks here who are as integral to their attacking play as anyone in the forward line on both sides. Like, these are, as you say, these are two All-Ireland contenders, and there's a few teams who you might call All Ireland contenders, and you could say if you wrap up this player and that player, you're sorted. Armagh, in a way, have benefited in a way from kind of the last couple of years where Rian O'Neill has become a little bit more peripheral, and now he's gone. Obviously, even though I did hear a murmur yesterday that he might be back in the panel, but that happens about once a month. But like, they are a more rounded team. They're scores from everywhere, whereas Donegal, like similarly, these aren't two teams where you can say, well, if we strap down your man, we should win. Like these are teams with threats everywhere, literally full back line to full forward line.
Yeah, and your matchups as like because the rules have introduced a bit more of an element of mano a mano. I think matchups are becoming more central now again. So you would assume Armagh they're going to have the plan for Darrow O'Boyle, but there's a lot of fires to put out. You've got like the O'Donnells, they're playing really well. Of course, Michael Murphy, like McBrearty looks like he's had a bit of a rebirth in form. No, that largely, I think Paddy's an extremely consistent player, but he does pick up the odd knocks and bruises, and he's around a long time. And as Nigel outlined, the body, takes its toll eventually. But that's a huge amount of work for an Armagh defence to try and make sure that they tie everybody up. That's not even to mention Oisin Gallen, who was, didn't start the first day, came obviously the last day. So like but the flip side is equally taxing from a Donegal perspective, and the depth that Armagh have right across their forward line, Forma Murnan, Connaughty, like they have, there's so many imponderables, and sometimes it can be like if this game is really tight, it could be something much like what happened with Galway Mayo. I think it will come down to moments, key moments. Might be a refereeing decision, might be a penalty call, might be a bit of magic from Michael Murphy and a really good goal or something. I think because the difference between the panels and the squads and the quality that both teams bring is so finite and so small, I think it's just going to be a really, really small one or two things that shifts the dial one way or the other.
Do you know what I'm fascinated to see, lads? I'm fascinated to see how Donegal's low defensive block copes with the structure of the Armagh attack, because Armagh will load a full forward line. They'll throw 8 lads in there as complete decoys to create space for say like Stephen Campbell or Turbot. If I was Donegal, and no, I have some cheek to be saying if I tell Jim McGuinness what to do, but
you push out.
Yeah, I wouldn't be tagging all them lads to go in and keep depth in their attack. I'd risk, if they put 7 in, I'd maybe put 5 lads tagging and have 2 covering the space in behind or in front of the arc. I'm fascinated to see how Donegal approached what Armagh will do, because you talk, Rory, about they have depth of panel members, but they've savage depth when they're attacking in terms of they'll flood the full forward line, and they're happy enough to have numerous decoys. I do find it fascinating. They're the most structured attacking team in the country.
Yeah, they really are. And yeah, as you say, there has to be a test of this Donegal kind of system, Nigel, because they're all the praise and everyone's saying, oh, the Jim McGuinness, Donegal, the new rules, it'll suit them. They'll be all Ireland contenders. They haven't really changed that much, have they? And there are ways, as you say, there are ways to manipulate teams now with the new rules, and you can see maybe Kerry are doing it a little bit, like they did last day against Clare. Like maybe Clare weren't expecting Kerry to shoot for 2-pointers because Kerry hadn't been doing that, so maybe they didn't defend the arc the way maybe they would against another team. Kerry shot O'Shea back, they start shooting for 2-pointers. You can kind of bluff a team, can't you? You can have a certain way of playing coming into a match. So Armagh might be expecting like Donegal might be expecting something, but as you say, you can flip it. And I personally think Donegal are still playing very much. I don't think Donegal are playing a game too different from what they would have played last year. So it'll be interesting to see if somebody could use the new rules against them.
And I think everyone is assuming Jim will have a trick up his sleeve, because that's the kind of aura he brings and what he done previously. But I actually think Donegal's DNA, and because of where they're located in the country, like they're at the top of the country, it's always blustery and windy and the elements are always at play. I think that kind of dictates their style of football from a young age. It has to be possession-based handball stuff.
Yeah.
So for Donegal to win the All-Ireland, I think they're probably going to need more of a kicking game. But I'm not sure that can be just a flip of a switch. I think it's nearly ingrained in them. Now, the only thing is they're outstanding at what they do. To win the biggest prize, I think they'll need more strings to their bow. But for Saturday evening, I don't think it'll be an issue. I think when it gets to Croke Park and you're playing a Galway or a Kerry, I think it takes a lot of energy to sustain that over the period of time Donegal are looking to sustain it, this running game. But like I said, it's their DNA. It's hard for them to flip it up, and it'll be interesting to see over the next few months.
And you would probably have to say as well, Mikey, that Armagh got a much better test in their semi-final than Donegal did against Down. People might be assuming that Donegal are holding something back, that they might be playing slightly within themselves because the quality of the opposition that they faced so far hasn't really. But no, they've had a testy enough run. I mean, Derry, Monaghan, and Down to get to an Ulster final is as tough as you're going to get. But that semi-final victory for Armagh the last day, when they were the better team by a good bit and still could have lost, and for them to eke that one out, I think showed an awful lot about their character. And I think that'll, I think that'll definitely stand to Armagh a lot more. They're coming in as All-Ireland champions. They're playing the Ulster champions. It's the game of champions, let's call it.
But Rory, crucially, and what I was about to come to was, it's over a decade and a half since they've won Ulster, and they are as desperate to win Ulster as they are.
Is it 2008?
2008, yeah.
2008. It's a mad stat, really, when you consider.
It's up there with Clare, really, and the Munster hurling.
Yeah, and it'll definitely be a box that, because I think Gary McGeaney had a dreadful Ulster championship record for the first number of years that he was in charge of the team. Now, look, he's rectified that in a big way, in a spectacular fashion over the last while. And look, I suppose they have a great opportunity now. Did they lose the final the year before on penalties as well to Derry?
Yeah. 2 in a row on penalties,
Yeah. So, I mean, I just hope it doesn't go to penalties. That's the only thing for Armagh's sake. I don't know if anybody could handle that, but it could. You just wouldn't know. It's going to be extremely tight, very hard to call.
Yeah. I can't wait to see as well. Now, Nigel, I don't know whether Michael Murphy will start or not, but if he does come on, I wonder will Aidan Forker go over and mark him and maybe, say hello to him in the same way he did the last time. Maybe not quite as aggressively.
Yeah, no, I'd say he'll introduce himself to himself, all right, yeah.
Yeah, maybe not headbutt him in the chest this time though, because that got him in trouble. And before we go on to the next match, I think about Peadar Mogan and I think about Barry McCambridge and these likes of defenders, Nigel, who like to get forward, shall we say, and that probably didn't exist in 2010 when you started out, but it definitely existed throughout your career. How much did you hate that as a forward when you had a corner forward who decided he wanted to get into the attack?
I can't measure how much I hated it. It's funny, we played Armagh in a game around 2016, 2017. It was a humiliating defeat for Offaly. It was something like 30 points. Kieran McGeaney was over them. And it was my first real taste of positions meaning nothing. Like in Offaly, we're somewhat to our detriment, we're very traditional. We like football played a certain way, and the ball was threw up in the athletic grounds in Armagh. And I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, lads. Is his name Michael Shields? He was a very good player for Armagh.
Yeah,
that's right. He was marking me full back. I was full forward, and he just sprinted 80 meters off the ball. I tried to grab him. I couldn't grab him, and I looked, and he was hand passing the ball over the bar 30 seconds later, and I was like, football is changing here. So yeah, no, it's disastrous really from a forward's point of view. But do you know what positions are kind of? I think when are cornerbacks and fullbacks, it's kind of a thing of the past. Like the ball's thrown up, and then I don't know, like that. Yeah, there's a traditional sense there'll be the three back, but they're not cornerbacks or fullbacks or anything like that. It's brilliant. Like it's better that it's a more rounded game of football.
Yeah, I had to Google it there just to make sure. Mark Shields.
Mark Shields. He was good.
That's what you were doing. You were shouting, Michael, come back, but he was ignoring you because his name was Mark. That was the problem. Okay, look, let's move on to the Leinster final.
Just a small matter of the Leinster final.
Yeah, this is it, Rory. This is bizarre. Croke Park, there's going to be north of 50,000 people there for a 4:15 throw-in. And most significantly, it marks the return to GAA TV production of Rory O'Neill. So this is just a humongous occasion on a number of fronts, Rory.
Yeah, I'm like the Eagles, back for a farewell tour. But It's look, I'm looking forward to it. Like what a program to actually come back into, to be perfectly honest. And I think we're pitch side on Sunday. The atmosphere will bounce. I think the crowd will grow because I think the hype around this
Oh, I'd say so. I think
will
you'll get neutrals coming to
will
this
add
now.
to
Yeah.
the attendance, and I think it'll
You get neutral fans here, and there's going to be 50 odd thousand people in Croker. They'll
and
go because it means it's a big event.
And the really fascinating thing about this is it's the only provincial final that doesn't contain a Division 1 team, yet it's probably the provincial final with the most amount of hype, the most amount of colour, the most amount of backstory, the most amount of narrative. There's so many different facets to it. And it's, again, a completely 50-50 game. Now, look, people might say Louth's track record over the last while has been very good. They beat Meath in the championship last year. They beat them in the league in the final round robin game back in March. And they have been probably playing at a higher level. They were in their third provincial final, and their under-20s won the Leinster championship. Their minors, as we know, are facing Nigel's team now. And there's a real air of positivity and a real wind in the sails of Louth football, and they will be coming down in big numbers on the trains. I'll be steering well clear of the commuter from Dundalk and Drogheda on Sunday morning, right? Because that could be wild. So we might have to drive. But everything about it. The Leinster Council fixing the launch for the Battle of the Boyne. I see Ger Brennan out today saying there's a healthy hatred. Now, I don't know in whose language you can have a hatred that is healthy, right? But it's just, look, everything is building towards this, and I think it'll be a cracker.
Yeah. I think we were all getting fed up with the Dubs. I think that's fair enough to say, Nigel, except for the Dubs. But they have to accept them winning it by, somewhere between 10 and 20 points every year wasn't doing a whole lot. But now for the likes of Offaly, Wicklow, Wexford, Longford, even whoever,
Westmeath, Kildare,
every county in Leinster now looking at this final can say, why not us? And because for so long, the likes of yourself were getting patted on the head saying, "Geez, aren't you great to still be lining out for your county and doing all that, showing all that commitment when you haven't a snowball's chance in hell of winning anything." Well, now again, Nigel, now that you've timed it for your exit, there is now a little bit of hope for everybody, even
30 lads are going to,
Mike,
yeah, exactly. Mike, sorry, Nigel, before you come in, 30 lads come Sunday at 6 o'clock are going to have a championship medal in their pockets. Sorry, Nigel.
No, and just on that, Rory, you just have to make me think of something. Is there any players in Leinster outside of Dublin with a Leinster medal?
No. What's his name from Laois retired?
Ross Munley
retired 3 years ago. He was the last one.
That in itself tells you everything you need to know about the Leinster Championship. It was something, look, people poked fun at over the last 15 years, and to be honest, rightfully so. There was no competition. It was bereft of any sort of spectator imagination. People couldn't get invested. It was boring. So this year, and the new rules is added to it, lads. The new rules is added to it. It got Meath over the line against Dublin. The 2 pointers was critical, but Owen Frayan was nearly putting them over from behind the stand in Moore Park. And I think I cannot wait for Sunday. I'm looking forward to going up because this is what Leinster football needed. This is what Gaelic football needed. It's bred new life into it. Like, if you're a Louth or Meath supporter, you're travelling up Sunday, and the expectation, the excitement, and these players themselves have a chance to change their lives. Like, if a Louth player wins a Leinster medal, it's about 57 or the 50s.
57.
It's unbelievable. Even Meath, who traditionally are used to winning, lads, they have a chance to win a Leinster medal. And like, there were a dime a dozen at one stage in Meath, but it's precious now, do you know?
Yeah, exactly. But another thing Ger Brennan said, Nigel, was that he expects it to be a nervy affair. And you can imagine that, can't you? For the first 15, 20 minutes, none of these, I know Louth have played in the last two finals, but best will in the world, it was a shot to nothing for them. This year they probably go in as favourites, maybe. I haven't looked at the odds, but they're at least, they're at least joint favourites, you'd imagine. And for me, like, it's a chance to, they've slayed the dragon, but how often do you see that happen, that the team who takes out the favourites kind of fails to perform in the final? So both teams are going to be very nervy.
Yeah, and I don't like to bring this up, but when Cork beat Kerry in the 2020 and Tipperary went on and won the Munster, it's
Yep.
there is history for it. No, I think this is slightly different, lads, in the sense that I think this is as a 50-50 contest as you can get. I don't think there's a clear favourite, and there's a brilliant narrative going into it. There's a storyline. I think, and I'm probably hyping it up too much. I think it's going to match the Masters Sunday in terms of drama, and it's going to be brilliant. It's good. Loud. I was at the Loud Kildare game in Tullamore, and I thought Kildare were the better team for large portions of it. But Loud played with such composure and maturity at critical moments. They played like a team who had operated at a higher level for a few years, and they didn't panic. And like Craig Lennon is an X-factor footballer, but he was popping up at the right times. They'd hold on to the ball when they had to hold on to it. They weathered the storm. But like I said, for large periods, Kildare were the better team, but Loud found a way to win. So it's hard. If anyone that can tell me with any sort of certainty who's going to win Sunday, I think they're lying.
Yeah. Rory, Louth do have the Indian sign over them, which is very unusual. They obviously won that last league meeting, and they beat him in the championship last year doing a scheme, which was their first championship win over Meath since 1975.
Yeah, but like the tide is turning, and there is like, as we mentioned already, I went up to watch the Leinster under-20s semi-final between Louth and Dublin because we had a young lad playing from my club here, and obviously they beat they whopped Dublin last night in the minor semi-final. Like they are producing, they've put a huge amount of work in. They've targeted their underage ranks. They've sorted out a huge, like we saw it last year, even with St. Mary's RD probably gave Coola the best game that Coola were given in the Leinster Club Championship. The standard of footballer that they're producing, the quality of player, they have a fantastic centre of excellence up there. They've got themselves extremely well organised. They're looking to try and redevelop the county grounds. I think they've made progress on that front. There's a vision there. There's organisation. They're showing. Now they're getting an injection of population too, and that obviously does help as well. But they are really gathering a massive force in behind them. Their county is going to be behind them. They're going to bring down a massive crowd. And you know what's the other thing that I love about we see it with Tyrone, Donegal, Cork, Kerry and Louth Meath. That splash of red, white and green gold, when you see that en masse, it just gives such a sense of occasion to it. I think this is an unbelievable opportunity for them, though. I think they will probably feel, if we go all the way back to 2010, and I don't think 2010 has any real relevance for the players. No. I'm sure it does for supporters, and it's a great yarn to talk about in advance of the game. It's not really that relevant in terms of the players themselves. But if you do go back, they were going into that game very much as underdogs because Meath had hammered Dublin by 5 goals in the earlier round, was the semi-final. This time round, there's a different type of pressure attached to it. They're going in, probably in some people's minds, as favourites. They have been a team with good management. They've been a team that have progressed now, and is now really, really the time for them to, take that next step. And I suppose you're going to find out. You couldn't make any predictions with any certainty because we know Meath will enjoy going in there as well with that tag and whatever, people might depict them as. But you couldn't call it, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're in for a long afternoon.
Yeah, no, it could be a close one. And I suppose from your point of view, Nigel, isn't it great to be, able to kind of list off the forwards you're going to see in action, like, Downey, Grimes, Mulroy, Burns, and then on the other side, like the Meath full forward line the last day scored 19 points between them, like James Conlon, Keith Curtis and Owen Frayne. Like, these are two teams now who are well capable of shooting the lights out, really, aren't they?
They are, and like the standard of forward on show is brilliant, and I still have to get my head around the new scoring. Like, a lad can easily score 11 or 12 points now, and it just sounds mad. Poor Killian O'Connor's record is going to be shattered in no time, but
yeah,
I think there's brilliant X-factor forwards on display on Sunday, and again, the 2-pointers could have a huge say in it. In Croke Park, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in comparison to the smaller provincial grounds, but like Rory was saying, what I love about it is, and I don't know what it is, but it's that colour contrast. Like the All-Ireland final last year, fair enough, it didn't live up to expectation in terms of the spectacle, but as they were marching around the parade, the orange and the maroon, I thought This was
Yeah.
class, and I think we're going to have something similar on Sunday, and it's adding to the drama. It's yeah, I can't wait for it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Okay, well look, before we let you go, Nigel, and get Dalo into top at hurling, the Tailteann Cup obviously kicks off this weekend. As we mentioned already, your own County Offaly are welcoming Wicklow. Tough enough group that Offaly, Wicklow, and Laois is probably the group of death in this year's Tailteann Cup. From a player's point of view, Nigel, like from Offaly, you can only speak of Offaly, I suppose. But what do you think the buy-in is? Do you think the Tailteann Cup is still kind of holding people's interest from a playing point of view?
I do. I know from chatting to lads this year, they're very focused and they want to do well in it. My problem with the Tailteann Cup is, and I think it's actually a brilliant competition and a must need for the GAA. Like I don't think it's non-negotiable really. Teams need to be playing at their level. What I'd like to see is that, I know in Sam Maguire I can see the sense in 3 out of 4 going through into groups, because every game captures the imagination. I don't think the early rounds of the Tailteann Cup captured the imagination, and I think it's a competition that needs to start with a bang, because you kind of feel like you're always trying to convince supporters to come and watch it. So I just think with a little bit more jeopardy in the early games, whether it's because from the knockout stages everything will be fine, but a little bit more jeopardy in the early stages where everyone can get invested in the Tailteann Cup early doors is what it needs. But Mikey, in terms of buy-in from players, I know the lads are training ridiculously hard. They're aiming to win it. There's no point in saying otherwise, and they will be thereabouts. But the buy-in is there from the players. I'm hoping the buy-in is there from the supporters in our county. I know some counties it's hit and miss of what the buy-in is, but I just like a little bit more jeopardy early doors is the only thing I'd say about it.
Yeah, you've said the same, Rory. I think in the past that was your concern. The group stages might be a little bit too much Tailteann Cup for the paying public.
Yeah, and I never really felt the Tailteann Cup needed a round robin.
No.
I think if you actually just went straight into, now maybe I don't know whether you might give teams a second chance, even if that's what you wanted to do. But I think the Sam Maguire suffers from a sort of a bloated sense of too many matches and too little at stake. Well, then the Tailteann Cup, you could nearly double that in terms of disinterest in the earlier rounds. And I think it would be helped. But again, look, this is what, a 3-year experiment, and maybe they're going to look at tweaking that. We know Sam Maguire's changing next year. I assume the Tailteann will change in a similar fashion because they two tend to mirror each other, and they want obviously the calendar to marry up.
I haven't seen any mention of that.
I didn't see that. I didn't see any mention of that either. So look, if that were to happen, where you have your winners round and your losers round, and basically you're into a kind of a knockout competition much more quickly, I think the Tailteann will benefit from that. But yeah, there's a couple of interesting fixtures this weekend. I think Westmeath Antrim is an interesting one, and it'll be interesting to see the big thing is, can the teams get the buy-in? The teams that get the buy-in will go deep into the competition, and there's plenty at stake then to win. The fear, I suppose, for some counties is the phone calls start coming from Boston and New York, and that's where then the competition suffers, I think, a wee bit.
We're bigging up Leinster football here, Nigel, and I think we can continue that by saying that, Offaly, Laois, Kildare, Westmeath would probably have to go down as, the likeliest winners. Maybe you could, maybe throw Fermanagh, Antrim in there. Ulster teams tend to do well. Who do you see, if not the faithful county, who do you see coming out on top in the Tailteann?
I think Kildare are still going to be thereabouts. Like, from watching them, so obviously we played them twice this year, and I had a very close view of them, and Offaly probably deserved to win both days, but they were a bit wasteful with their chances. But I watched them in Tullamore, and I think they improved significantly from when they played us in the league final. I think Kildare will have a huge say in it. Westmeath have operated at a high level. They won the Tailteann Cup in 2022. We all seen the savage celebrations in Mullingar. And I suppose to the naked eye, you could say that they really haven't pushed on. But I actually think Westmeath have been really unlucky and really competitive at a higher level. I think they're a very dangerous team, and I think they'll embrace it. Offaly, I think, will be thereabouts, but there's no guarantees. Like, last year's Tailteann Cup was an out-and-out disaster. So, like, there's no guarantees in any of this. Sligo, Antrim, Fermanagh can, on any given day, take out a big gun as well. And yeah, look, it's really hard to call with the Tailteann Cup, because, as Rory says, who's getting the calls to go where, what panels, who's dropping off panels. But by the time they get to the knockout stages, we'll have a clearer view. But yeah, Mike, you were kind of spot on there with the teams you named. It'll more than likely be one of them teams that get up the steps and lift it. And I think it's important for the development as well, because what added a little bit of credibility to the Tailteann Cup was the fact that Meath and Down, traditional Sam Maguire winners, embraced it and won it. And I think that adds credibility to it, and they didn't disrespect the tournament. So other counties definitely shouldn't do that either.
Yeah, good point. Nigel, lovely to have you on for your debut, as we said. Now,
Thanks very much, lads.
Yeah, your retirement's a long way away after that, I would say. We could safely say. Enjoy the football this weekend, Nigel, and hopefully we'll be chatting to you again. And we'll be back now in one moment with Anthony Daly to look ahead to the hurling weekend.
Appreciate that, lads. Thank you. See you later.
He hits it! He hits it! It's over the bar! Oh! Holy Moses!
We're back and we're joined by podcasting royalty, Anthony Daly. Now, Daly, we tend to keep this to under 2 hours. So if you have any good ideas, now don't hold them for the second act now. Just let them out.
You want to talk about racing in Gorham Park or anything like that, Mike? No?
The tangents tend to be kept to a minimum, he says. No, not an act. There's plenty of tangents. How are you keeping, Daly?
Great, Mikey. Great.
Nice
Fresh
win.
from the
Nice
victory
win
last
for your
night
little...
in super value, Parky Keeve.
Yeah.
And we can't find our way down there, but, we managed to go down and eke out a win of some sorts anyway. But,
great record in Parky Queeve, Dalo.
Always loved it, Rory.
Yeah.
Always loved it. Loved the 90s down there against Tipperary. Yeah.
I was there that famous day when you absolutely hammered Tipp. Do you remember that one? Like, was that a replay, Dalo?
That was a replay, 99, yeah.
I was there. I was standing on the Blackrock end.
Yeah.
And Jamesy, I think, had a blinder, didn't he?
He always had a blinder.
Yeah, he did. In fairness to him, he did.
I don't know if you read Shane McGrath's column this week, but he said Shane McGrath's mother always said Jamesy O'Connor could perform miracles on and off a hurling pitch because he was Shane's economics teacher and he got him a B in his leaving cert.
Well, you see, that's the problem with McGrath. He's ex-Flannans, so he's a bit of sympathy, but he'll have no sympathy this weekend, Mikey.
No way.
No, he won't at all. He also said, Dale, we might as well start with your game then. I was going to start with Leinster, but the way you two are no, straight away, we'll start with Munster, because we always start with Munster. I'm only messing, obviously. Clare v Tipp is massive game on Saturday evening, 6 o'clock. And another thing Shane McGrath said, Dale, was he basically said there are careers on the line here, that there are lads who probably won't be target out in 2026 even. And he's like, this is a knockout game of hurling, and this could be some lads' last serious competitive game of inter-county hurling. It is that big, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I saw his article, and or was it a pod or an extract from the pod? But
he's everywhere these days. He's like you, Dale.
He is. He's great. But no, he mentioned managerial maybe lives on the line as well, and I don't think that's the case in Clare, because Brian, I'd say, could stay forever now after last summer, but for Liam, Tipp is Tipp, and they don't want to suffer that long, and they have a massive batch of underage lads coming through. Obviously, we probably need a rebuild after this year in lots of ways, and that you would expect that a couple might walk away, and that naturally a couple are shoving on a bit. So yeah. But I don't think Brian Lohan's under any pressure. It'd be all down to himself, I think, to stay or go. And I'd expect he'd stay. I think he likes the job, and he's good at the job. And so yeah, but there is a lot of players that you're either a few weeks off and back with your club, or you're looking forward maybe to try and get into that tree in the Munster Championship. And even at that, with a win for either side, you're guaranteed nothing. They've only one game left either side, but if you lose, it's doomsday. Let's face it.
Yeah. What? Speaking of Lohan, he'll have earned his corn now in the last couple of weeks. Dalo kind of trawling through the ashes of that game down in Walsh Park, because it wasn't the Clare we'd seen a week earlier. In Ennis against Cork, they were that little bit off. Like, they're used to the 7-day turnaround at this stage. They went all the way last year off the back of it. But what do you think it was against Waterford?
I'd say Ennis was a little bit false in that I thought Cork were a better team. I thought they'd weathered the storm, Mike, and they'd gone 8 up again. And the red card then had a huge influence. And you even saw the weekend John Kiley taking off Dermot Burns when he was on a yellow. And really, it's very difficult now because in our day, we'd still be lumping the ball, but now they're using the ball. And you need 15 on the field, I think. And so I thought Ennis was a little bit false. I thought Cork were probably the better team. And there was a celebratory atmosphere around the town afterwards. I was trying to get into a hostelry to watch Limerick and Tipp, and God almighty, they were celebrating as if they'd won something. And I was really worried about Waterford, I have to say, coming in fresh and, good form from 1B and won the league in that level and gone up. And we know they have a decent team. So, it's somewhere in the middle. We're down a lot of bodies, Mikey. There's no denying. I mean, you take Limerick without Dan Morrissey, Dermot Burns, Aaron Gillen, and Cian Lynch. And this is the reality of, Conor Cleary, Dermot Ryan, 2 hurlers a year, then Tony Kelly and Shane O'Donnell. So,
any of that quartet back this weekend?
I don't know. The third mystery of Fatima, Mikey, be easier to find out. When we'd no phones, it was handy enough to find out. But now that we've all the levels of communication, we can't find out a thing. Rumours that Cleary will be okay. Rumours that Kelly is back at school teaching. But teaching leaving certs is an awful lot handier than the Munster Championship.
Well, unless there's Shane McGrath, in which case it's probably harder than playing in the Munster.
He's only in primary school, definitely.
I mean, teaching him when he was in secondary school. That was, you need to be Jamesy to do that.
Yeah. Look, it's promised very warm as well. How right can Tony be? I don't know. There is rumours that Mr. O'Donnell might be on the bench, which would be a huge lift to the whole county. So, but look, it's backs to the wall. I think Tipperary have sent back a lot of the tickets. I don't think they've taken up their full allocation, and I think the Clare people are snapping them up. So I'm hoping the park will be a cauldron on Saturday evening. And we've, be honest, Mike, we have a few lads who were nominated for All-Stars last year. Some of them got All-Stars, haven't played at all really for us this year, League or Championship, and we need them to step up. I don't need to name names, but they know, and I know. 4 or 5 of them need to step up now. Without Tony, maybe without John Conlon, who's a big doubt, seemingly with a back injury. Conor Cleary, what a servant. D. Ryan, he would be a leader for us now. And what can I say about Shane O'Donnell? So well, we need those guys to step up, and if they don't, we'll be in huge trouble and we'll be out, I'd say. But I think they might.
Yeah. Rory, it goes without saying, Dalo's already touched on it. Discipline will be key on Saturday evening for both these counties.
Yeah, but I think once you get into the game itself, it's less of an issue. I think most of the tomfoolery tends to happen before the ball is even thrown in. And I think we might have seen the last day, I don't know, Dalo, were you in? You weren't in Walsh Park, but apparently there was far less of it. And now, just as well as probably better than anybody. It was a very physical game between Waterford and Limerick, so there'll be plenty of physical exchanges. That won't change. But just the messing beforehand, I think it looks like it has stopped, and I think it probably took a really unfortunate situation for poor Darren McCarthy to sort of put a kibosh on it. And I think that's welcome, because once the ball goes in, it is going to be helter-skelter. You saw Dermot Burns. Dermot Burns can still be very flahoolic with the hurley when he wants to be, as can many players. So it'll still be very physical. Discipline will be key. Being sharp on the line, as Kylie was the last day, no doubt. Liam and Brian will be the same this time round. It's a huge game for Tipp. I think it's nearly a bigger game for Tipperary. Dalo mentioned earlier about Brian having so much credit in the bank. I think that's absolutely fair. And if this season crashed and burned for Clare, they don't win that many All-Irelands. So that All-Ireland, that was one of the sweetest ones they'll have ever won. That'll nurture them for many, many years to come. Tipperary haven't won a game in 2 years in the Championship, Dalo? Have they won a match? They lost all their matches last year.
They beat us 2 years ago anyway in Ennis, that's all I know.
I think that might be their last victory.
Could be
in the Munster Championship, because they lost all their games last year. They obviously drew the first day out, and we saw what happened to Páirc Uí Chaoimh. So it's a huge game for Tipperary. the mood music doesn't seem too positive when you see tickets being returned. I think that's very disappointing as well, because we know support matters. We saw John Kiley last week issued a rallying call to try and make sure that the Limerick supporters get out and buy those tickets, because we know the red hordes will descend upon the Gaelic grounds and will have no problem in buying up the tickets if they don't. So,
are you a bit, Dale? Are you a bit surprised at this? Now, I know Tipperary fans can be a little bit fickle, shall we say, but given how they went the first day out, and given how Páirc Uí it was basically they were on a hiding to nothing once they went down to 14 men, and they didn't give up. They died with their boots on, as the saying goes. Are you a bit surprised that there's this kind of seeming level of apathy already from the supporters?
Kind of, Mike, yeah, because I would be inclined to agree with you that they fought on in Cork. They still lost 26, 24 points. Like, if you were a Clare hurler in my day, that'd be a regular scoreline. Before we made a bit of a break. So, like, I think supporters sometimes can be like that. They can just say, well, where are we going anyway? We might win in Innis, but can we beat Limerick or Cork? We probably can't. So they drew with Limerick, but that can tend to happen in a county like that, and you're not really worried about them, to be honest, Jeff. They don't want to come. It's only up the road. There's a motorway now and all. They don't even have to come through Clarecastle, to be honest, Mikey. So look, they'll bring the sandwiches, the flash satay. The day is promised lovely. So they'll still have a sizable support, what can it take? 20. You definitely expect 6 or 7 from Tipp anyway, and that'll make enough noise. And the colours are bloody so well similar anyway. I never really noticed on a big day whether we had more support than Tipp.
No, of course.
And we had many battles in the 90s. And you didn't really know who had more there. You could hear them singing, leaving them on and stuff like that. But yeah.
Sure, the Clare fans don't even know which jersey to wear because you wear a different jersey every week anyway.
Well,
so.
We could slip on the blue, I suppose, for this one. Yeah.
Who knows?
The lucky blue.
Yeah. Colin Keyes, Rory had a piece in the Notice Morning talk about how since his first season in charge of Tipp, the goals have kind of dried up. They scored 5 the last time they beat Clare down in Ennis, and they're not scoring them with the same regularity. And I know Limerick kind of reverted to type last week and just won by raining points over, but you are seeing other teams, Rory, really focusing on, the bear in the square, dropping ball in, causing a bit of chaos, trying to score goals, and it's working for other counties. And it's Tipp, naturally, you go back through time, they were renowned for their goal scorers, and it seems they definitely have the personnel there. It's just whether they make it a focus or not.
Well, Shane Michael, I think, would have played a big part in that sort of tradition that they would have had. He was
Lar Corbett
and Lar and John Bubbles. They had they so much craft with those types of players inside in that full forward line, and they were like real punishers and finishers. I'm not sure if they have that type of personality there at the minute. Going Route 1 is definitely paying dividends, and we've seen different teams do it. I mean, I think from a Clare perspective, I would nearly say Dougie has nearly been their best player. It's from what I've seen so far. Like, he was outstanding. Did he get man of the match in the Cork match? He didn't, did he? Well, he should have. I think it was Brian Hayes got it. Yeah, but I would have probably gone for Dougie, just in terms of the way he just turned the game with sheer force of will. Even the last day, I just think his biggest problem without Shane O'Donnell and Tony Kelly is he's trying to be all things to all men. You want him inside because you want a target, but then you need his ball winning abilities out around the half forward line, and that's he's so vital now. And that'll be an interesting situation that if Tony is fit, it might release him to go in on the edge of the square. I would say they'll rain ball down on top of him. Do Tipperary have the same option at the other end? Do they have somebody of that? Firstly, the physical presence that he brings, the paw that he has, and then the skill that he has, the strength. And so I don't think Tipperary have that. And they probably have to try and find different ways until they produce a forward. And they will produce, because Dale mentioned earlier, they have plenty of quality coming through. We will see it in that 20s final next week, which will be a Tipp Clare again. Like Tipperary are, building again. They've got plenty of players coming, so I wouldn't be feeling too sorry for them if they don't win on Sunday, because don't you worry, they won't be done for long.
I don't think
And
Daly
in
was
fairness,
crying
Mikey,
for them.
I think John McGrath, he sprung him against Limerick. We didn't see it coming, maybe, and he got the 2 goals.
Yeah.
But the last day then, once the man was sent off, he was on a 2v3, and John.
Yeah, he's going to be snuffed out.
Yeah, it's hard for him then, but he has a goal threat though, and if we don't have Conor Cleary, John will fancy his chances up there. But Darren McCarthy will be a loss for them now. There's no doubt about that.
Huge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, Dalo, call it. So who's going to win it?
The bookmakers have it completely wrong anyhow, Mike, making Clare hot favourites. I think it's very much 50-50, but I think people in the county are feeling huge pressure for this one, that the boys could not come out of Munster. They've always come out of Munster in the last 4 or 5 years, and I think we'll get there. I don't know how, but I just think the whole will of the place will drive them over the line.
Rory?
Yeah, I fancy, I think a load of things kind of stack up for me. There was just a flatness in the end in Tipperary. It was a bad beating. I think that can deflate a panel. Sometimes it's a big job of work from management to resurrect the morale after such a good performance against Limerick, but that's probably what they'll point to. They're going down like it's there's not too many teams go to Ennis and get out of there live. Tipperary are one of the few teams that have shown that they can do it. Have they the kind of character within the team to deliver that on Saturday? I'm not so sure. And I think Clare, but it'll be tight.
Okay. Moving to Leinster, Connacht to be precise, Pearse Stadium, 3:15 on Saturday afternoon. Another knockout game, I would say. Well, it's 100% a knockout game for I think Wexford lose this day, and they can say goodbye, even though Wexford have been the kings of Leinster Houdini acts since since we brought in the round robin. I think defeat here off the back of defeat to Dublin would be too much for them. But Galway as well, poor against Kilkenny. There's no other way of putting it, and still to face there's no point two ways about it. What is a fairly impressive looking Dublin team. Galway need to get a win here and make advantage of home advantage in Pearse Stadium.
Yeah, I was impressed, I have to say, albeit that I think Offaly threw the kitchen sink at Dublin in Parnell and very nearly get out of there with a win. Bare the last 6-7 minutes got away from them. I thought they were, their development has still to get them ready for that type of a challenge, 7 days on. But I was impressed with Galway. You'd have to even be impressed on the line that Michal got 2 yellows and Aidan Hart got a straight red. They were up for it. Now, having said that, Dahi Burke could be a massive loss because I'd say he might have been earmarked for Lee Chin, and Lee Chin showed the first day, and in patches against Dublin as well, he was very good. I mean, he set up the goal for Rory. When you get him on the ball, he's such a force of strength and character. He'd bring the rest of them in. Jack O'Connor is back. I find this hard to call, I have to say. I think Wexford have been, the last 2 rounds of the league, beat Clare, beat Limerick. Got a good win with 14 men for a lot of it against Antrim. And the ghost goal in Parnell. Now, that'll be a bit of a worry, Mikey. I know you're a proud Wexford man, and that they'd let that get to them so much that they conceded the next 2 goals,
I'm not too worried about the goal score. I'm worried by the fact that they could not defend a puck out. Like they were they could not win the second ball. They let Dublin have their puck outs, but Dublin keeper rained them down on the 45-yard line, and the Dubs are big. And they knew exactly, it wasn't complicated hurling at all, but they did it very well, and Wexford had no answer for it. And Galway have the players to play that way if that's the way they want to play as well.
And they probably threw in a curveball with Hedjo in the corner that day, massive man, and vacated.
He's a good hurler on top of it as well. He's not just a big man, is he?
I know John's a great player. He always was. And he's fit now. He won't mind me saying that. Look. It was Wexford did an awful lot of the hurling in Parnell. The result goes against you sometimes. A bit like last night in the 20s. Cork did most of the hurling, I would say, and Clare came away.
Didn't take their chances.
Yeah, and that's hurling. That's hurling
Yep.
at the top level. Galway, yeah, I think they were very disappointed with the performance in Kilkenny. I think they were so flat; it was unbelievable. I think we all cut them and said how disappointing it was. And Micheál is a proven guy over them, and he got a reaction in Tullamore, and it's their first home game now in Salt Hill. I'd expect you'll have a good local crowd to tip along, and I just fancy them. The losers, I'd say, could still be in with a chance at third, but I'd say the losers are out of the Leinster final. Like, that'd be my thinking on it. So, and the last match, Wexford against Kilkenny, they have a good record against Kilkenny, especially if Kilkenny are home and hosed and into the Leinster final. So I wouldn't rule Wexford out quite yet, but I think the losers won't be in the Leinster final anyway, and it'll be a tall order to get third. And I just think Galway and Salt Hill if they produce, I think that'll be a big loss. Whether they'll put Pádraig Mannion now on Lee, I don't know. Jack O'Connor is back, so that gives them a little bit more from the puck out. He's a big man. He has to kind of control himself now from letting fly and stuff like that. But he's a good player, and he offers them a little bit extra going forward with the younger lads they have. So I think this is tight. This is tight, and if you go through the two matches, there's little to separate them because Galway was so flat the first day. Was impressed with them the last day. The biggest thing is Carl Mannion's on fire, and Wexford need to get a handle on that.
Yeah. When you look at it, when you look at the range of forwards that Galway have, you shouldn't really be thinking that this is a close game. I'm not saying that in any kind of Yera kind of way. Like Wexford are very, very reliant on Lee Chin, and then the two O'Connors on top of that. And there are promising young players there who are contributing points here or there, but like the forward line does not match up against the likes of Mannion, Whelan, Concannon on form, and then what they have coming from midfield as well. But the problem with Galway, Rory, it is consistency, isn't it? And after last year, it's very hard to put last year in the rearview mirror completely yet.
Yeah, and the flatness, the first day out against Kilkenny was something I suppose that'll still resonate with a lot of people when they're trying to get a read on Galway. I think the issue is like the thing with Galway, it was more or less admitted really by Micheál. They are in a rebuild mode. Like they're trying to bring a lot of young players through. That is going to take time. And that sometimes when you're trying to, I suppose, create a new team with a new identity and you're trying to get lads ready for the physical and intensity that is modern senior intercounty hurling, that takes a while to bring through. And what that could sometimes do, well, certainly for me anyway, I don't know whether Dalo agrees, it can lead to a patchiness in your form because you get lessons the odd day when you go out and you go, whoa, weren't expecting that. Need to up my game here, there, need to find a player or two. He's not going to cut it at cornerback. He's not going to cut it at wing forward. And I think Galway are learning that, and Micheál is learning that. And like we all heard the stories in advance of the league, how many players that he tried, how many players he gave opportunities to. He has continued to experiment. And you probably will see that. Now, they've got some obviously anchors right throughout the team. The Burks, the Mannions, they're still going to be the bedrock upon which Galway's challenge is launched from. But this isn't a Galway this isn't Galway of Micheál's first, when his first period in time in charge. They're a very different Galway team now. Yes, they're at home. There seems to be a little bit more of a tailwind behind the Galway footballers at the minute. So I'm not entirely sure what kind of a crowd we might get there, particularly given that it's in the middle of the afternoon and how far it is for Wexford to travel. So there might be a strange atmosphere. It's on RTE. I give Wexford a chance. There's loads I love about Wexford. I love Rossiter for a start because he's just there's a genuineness about him. He didn't really win Germain to a massive extent about that non-awarding of the incorrectly awarding of the goal the last day. He just accepted it and moved on. I think there's a good togetherness there. He's definitely the right man to have in charge. They have a reasonably good record against Galway. I don't think they'll be overly worried, or I don't think there'll be any level of fear. I think they beat Galway last year in the championship, admittedly at home. I think the league game between the two was tight enough this year, was it?
Galway won it. I don't think it was too tight, but
Right.
I wouldn't be
Yeah.
judging Wexford on their
and
the
there's
before
yeah.
Lee Chin league campaign.
Yeah.
Anyway,
exactly.
To be honest
There you
with you.
go. So, like, I think it is a very, very hard one to call. I think, though, from a Wexford perspective, given that they still have Offaly and Kilkenny to come, it's a tricky enough run in now. Look, they're all tricky, I suppose, but I think a defeat for Wexford, be a big sinkhole in their sort of championship ship. So I think they'll produce a good performance. I think they played really well against Dublin the last day out. I give them a chance.
Yeah. Before we move on, just I am interested to see how the midfield battle goes, Dalo, because Cianan Fahy and David Burke, obviously a well-established pairing. But Wexford, Conor Hearn has been one of Wexford's best hurlers in the last couple of years. But they've matched him this year with Simon Donoghue, who is, I would say, we've had Simon Donoghue on the podcast before. He's a nice fella, but he was your welcome to your nightmare type cornerback, and they've put him out to midfield now, and it's an interesting move. He's even popped over a couple of scores, and there's been other times where he's very quickly given the ball to someone else so as not to shoot. So he's the stayer and Hearn is the goer. But it's an interesting approach because there's no shortage of candidates to play in midfield. So to bring Simon Donoghue out there is an interesting one. So I'm kind of interested to see how that one goes.
Yeah, Hearn has been your type of box to box hurler. He's been involved in last gasp tackles, and he has been up the other end, creating goals. And as you say, Simon, we'd all know him as a defender and a teak tough. Yeah, but sometimes you have to do that. I would have started off with Brian O'Connell as a cornerback when I took over Clare, and then by the time I was finishing with Clare, he was one of the best midfielders in the country. So sometimes you have to do that. Interesting that Galway, it would have been kind of Cianan Fahy and Tom Monaghan looked like, and they went back for the two Burks the last day. And even though Micheál has been handed a 4-year term, I predicted coming into it 4 years, me arse kind of like you have to try and get the best out of what you have. And even back for David, and David's a great leader, and he mightn't last 70, but he might set the tone. He's a top man. And interesting one. Yeah, as you say, could Simon pick up David and try and nullify him and let the other two off and see how they go? And for Galway, I think Micheál is trying to establish a new kind of a spine with Gavin Lee and Cianan Fahy and Tiernan Killeen, and Whelan. I think it's a good move the last day to bring Whelan out to the half forward line. He's just not getting into it inside.
Yeah, he can be wasted in full forward sometimes, in full forward line.
He was probably fine with Joe full forward and him beside him, but you don't produce Joes overnight. Like Joe Kenning is one of the greats we ever saw, and when you lose Joe, then it's a different dynamic. And I think he might be better suited to outside at this stage, and Concannon is good inside, and the couple of young lads are starting, their fits and starts a bit, but that'll happen with younger players. So the last day with Clare, with Shane Meehan, we were all flabbergasted that Tony wasn't playing, but Shane Meehan came up with 4 points in play below Waterford. So, these young lads just need a bit of confidence, I think. And midfield could be crucial, but it mightn't be either in Salt Hill if the wind blows.
Yeah,
Thomas the warm.
No, the wind will blow.
Yeah,
it usually does anyway.
They just get cricks in their necks. Yeah, exactly. So you're both predicting a Wexford win there. That's grand. Thanks. Moving on. I suppose it's nice to see a traditional fixture back in the Leinster Hurling Championship.
Who dares to speak of 98?
Yeah, Kilkenny versus.
I'm going now.
Kilkenny versus Offaly. It is good to see it back. I think most people are putting down, like, Offaly the last day. Rory, they racked up 114 at home against Galway. Like, Jesus, 114. That's a scoreline they were getting in their heyday in Leinster back in the 90s. It's not going to do it now. A lot of people are putting that down to the quick turnaround between games. They've had a fortnight now, so do you give them a shot against Kilkenny?
No, not really. I don't think so. I think, look, Kilkenny are, if you were to pick the 6 teams in Leinster, out of the 6 of them, which could survive in Munster, and it's only really Kilkenny, I'd say. Like if you were to make Munster a 6-team championship, you'd probably say Kilkenny could get out of it. Not so sure you could say that about the rest, and that's the difference that Kilkenny are.
I do love how you turned the Leinster preview into a chat.
I know,
about Munster.
but you do have to sort of. I'm just using it, I suppose, as a means of drawing a comparative.
You could just say they're the best team in the province, but anyway, go on.
Yeah, sorry, Mikey, but it's I know. Apologies to all the Leinster hurling fans. Look, I think this is exactly where Offaly would have wanted to be. Like they've worked hard. They disappeared for an awful long time. They went down through the ranks. They were in Joe McDonagh. They even dropped down as far as Christy Ring. They had dropped down to Division 2 hurling. They're now back in Division 1A hurling. They've got themselves back into the Liam McCarthy. This is exactly where you would want to be. This is exactly the tests that you would want. This is the type of rivalry that you want to resurrect. You would have hoped for a better display. The last day they probably ran into a Galway still smarting from that defeat to Kilkenny the week before, and maybe weren't prepared for it. And they weren't prepared for maybe the sort of physical side of things that is still a road for them to travel. And that's where Kilkenny will bring it. And look, it's in Nolan Park. But I would expect Offaly to rise to it. I don't think they'll win the game, but I'd expect them to be slightly more competitive this week against Kilkenny, albeit still lose, than they were against Galway, because they still have a little bit of a road to go. And I think we wouldn't be judging Offaly's season just exclusively on what happens in Nolan Park at the weekend.
No, absolutely not, Dale. Look, they're looking at their match against Offaly, or against Antrim, which, barring a complete Wexford collapse, fingers crossed, it could be a relegation shootout, I suppose. And to stay in Leinster for Offaly, that would be a success, I think, in their first season.
Yeah, and I concur, Mikey, with nearly all of what Rory said. I'd be a small bit worried, though. Their 20s went out tame enough to Dublin on Monday. Their minors suffered an embarrassing defeat to Laois. I mean, with due respect to Laois, it wasn't Kilkenny. 7-23 to 13 points is frightening. No, we had our day in Clare of that when Cork beat us 40 points, which is way worse than that scoreline. And things have turned around since. I'd just be a small bit concerned for them that Davy's capable of coming with a day to Tullamore in the last day. And I'd say Davy is half an eye on this. Now, he'll have a half an eye on Dublin as well. Now, we'll get to that in a minute. But they've 2 home games left. They've 1 home game in Corrigan. I don't think he'll expect to get anything from Salt Hill. But certainly going to Tullamore, he'll say, we've been up here longer than Offaly have, and he'll have a cut at that. And if they lose it, Offaly, they could be back in Joe McDonagh. And I honestly thought on their league form, they could be the 3rd team in Leinster. That's looking unlikely now. I don't see them getting much out of Nolan Park. I don't see Derek Ling having to go back for TJ and Adrian Mullen. I'd say Shane Murphy, let them rest and be ready for later on. And
the fixture list hasn't been very kind to them either, has it?
No, 100%. They needed 3 at home, 2 away, but they got the opposite.
And to open up against a Dublin team who clearly, are maybe surprising some people, and then Galway at home, and then your do or die 3rd game is away to Kilkenny.
But they'll see the Dubs as a legitimate target, to use a phrase from years and years ago. They will in Corrigan, but it's just awfully, like, they put the kitchen sink into Parnell Park the first day, and they led, I think, 2 minutes in normal time they were ahead, and they conceded kind of 1-4 down the stretch in injury time, and I don't think they recovered from that then for Galway, and they don't need to ship a hiding here now. They need to be competitive and battle, and we all know they've really good young players. They have. It's kind of a crucial few weeks for them now, and I'd hate to see them going back down, because I know the progress, the quality of, the Dan Ravenhills, the Screenies, the Dan Burks, all these guys, Donald Shirley, they're really, really good hurlers. But Kilkenny probably be a step too far. It's just the manner now in which they play in this one, I think, and stay competitive right to the bitter end. And okay, they might not win. I don't think they'll win. But just as Rory said, to be very competitive and keep the spirits up then for the last two. I think they've Wexford and then they've Antrim, and Wexford could be down the dumps if they don't. So, a lot can happen yet in Leinster, but I think my old goalie, Mr. Fitzgerald, will be eyeing up that Tullamore game and saying, we could possibly stay in Leinster if we could win that. So that'll be one down the line. But there's a lot of water to flow under the bridge before that. But just a little bit of concern for Offaly in the last week or two, because if they'd won in Parnell, to be tails up and can we get third, or could we even make a Leinster final? But it finished bad for them. Unlucky enough to play great, and then Galway were burnt from the way they played against Kilkenny, came with a cause, and they fairly scorched them. Like even with the whole second half with 14 men, they were too strong all over the field.
And to remain competitive will be key, because that game against Antrim will be very much seen as a 50-50, and if that for some reason were to finish a draw, then you're into scoring averages. So being competitive is so important, Mikey.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of being competitive, then the aforementioned Antrim, Corrigan Park. Corrigan Park, I think at this stage, Dalo is almost being considered a 16th man for the Antrim hurlers, because I don't think anybody enjoys going up there to play a game of hurling. Is a fair enough assessment, isn't it?
No, and I was on the Sunday game, and obviously we were glued to the Munster games, and we were
obviously.
Well, no, it was because they were live. News was coming in that they were leading Kilkenny at half time. Now, then I text someone to know, was there a breeze? And they said there was a substantial breeze, and Kilkenny did pull away. And I don't think he's had his first choice between injuries and fellas stepping away and that. But the Dubs have had two games in Parnell, and they've made hay on the two of them. They've really struggled against Offaly for long periods. The Wexford game could have gone either way. Yep. Do we know enough about Dublin? I'm not sure. This will be a real test of Dublin. Now, my other podcast, I suppose, the two boys, TJ and Mark, were fairly adamant that they thought Dublin were really, strong and physical, and we're going to win this. I think this could be tight. I think Davy really have a cut off this. Albeit he'll know maybe that this mightn't put him safe. It will be the last match, maybe, that could put him safe. But I think he'd have a right go at it. The Dubs, look, if they've Donald Burke and if they have Danny Sutcliffe back, they're strong enough. Like they are, like, but whether they'll be back or not, I don't know. I don't even know about the Clare team. Never mind the Dublin team now. So, yeah, you'd expect Dublin should have enough on all form we've seen, but Corrigan, Wexford, it's not Kilkenny, it's the Dubs, and they will say they won't like coming here, lads. They're out of Parnell now for the third game. They've had the first two at home, first time out of Parnell, so they'll have a right cut. I think this could be tight, but I expect the Dubs to pull through all right.
Yeah, they Antrim now they lost their way a bit. Rory, I was at the game we went against Wexford, and it was almost like a repeat of the 2019 All Ireland semi-final when Wexford didn't know how to play against 14 men. Like Antrim seemed to struggle almost when Wexford went down to 14. But like Keelan Malloy, Shan Elliott, like James McNaughton, they have some very, very, very good forwards, and they've somebody, sorry, who is it that takes the frees from the back line? One of their free takers anyway is able to put him over from about
Ger Walsh,
about 90 yards. On their day, as Dalo says, if Davy has these boys up for it and the Dubs aren't dialed in, it wouldn't be the shock of all shocks.
No, well, it wouldn't be a massive shock, but it would be an upset for me. Like
Mikey, this is him wearing his Dublin hurling hat now.
Listen,
Rangers in football, but
we're making
packs in the hurling.
Listen, we're making great progress out here with the mighty under 11s, Dalo. The Dublin annihilated them in the league. I don't know, was it 125 to 15 points or something like that? They won by 13, 14 points. That's the most recent encounter. That to me, it's a long way back now to try and rectify that. I know it's league hurling and this is championship and it's totally different. I just get a sense, in fairness, I mean, look, you're talking about an All-Ireland club-winning manager that's taken over Dublin hurling. He's Dublin hurling dyed in the wool. He has definitely created a different vibe. There's a different bang off them, you know. I, I, I think to go out and beat Dublin now, I think you will have to earn it a little bit more. And there's a bit more steel there. Do they have the craft, the quality? I think, look, those tests are yet to come. We mentioned about how fixtures fall kindly. I think for Dublin to have 2 matches at home and Offaly, Antrim and Wexford, the first 3 up with Kilkenny, Galway last day out, I think that was a lovely way for Neil O'Callaghan to sort of intro himself into Leinster Championship. And I would expect them to get the job done. And I think if they don't, it'll be a major blot. But I would think that they would have enough quality, they've got enough momentum, and there's a really good vibe, as I said, a good spirit about them, and I think they'll go up there and they'll win.
Yeah, he's Dublin hurling through and through, Dale, isn't he?
He's bleeding the light blue now.
Bleeding blue now.
I had to bleed at Mikey there for 6 years because I was working with them, but your man from Nemo Rangers.
There's great crack.
Yeah, no, look, there is something to like about them, and they've options now. You know, you haven't even seen AJ Murphy much yet.
Donald Burke has been injured quite a bit as well.
Yeah, and like to try and Hedgehow the last day in the corner, I think that was a curveball, and you know, that mightn't be the game every day, but he's an option, and they have options now. If Burke and Sutcliffe are back, there are 2 more forwards back. Their backs seem fairly settled.
They're not as dependent as well, Dalo. I think there's a big difference. They're finding like Dara Power from Fingallians.
Yes.
You know, they're not as dependent. Like back in your day, you kind of had to draw from Kilmacud and Ballyboden. That was kind of like the nucleus of the squad.
The Northsiders wouldn't be too happy with you now, bud.
But Alan McGrath,
and the Tipp boys.
Yeah, no, they'd be very upset. But like, I think it was largely drawn from the Kilmacuds and the Ballybodens and Coola. You had those 3 kind of powerhouses on the south side. There's a different identity now. There's there's lads coming from the likes of Aaron's Isle and Nave Barrogue and Fingallians, which is, you know, like it shows that I suppose the quality is coming from different demographics, and I think it's changing the personality around the team.
Yeah, it's interesting. The last Sunday game, nighttime, last Sunday week, myself and Ursula were doing the hurling, and in the McGinley and Paul Flynn were doing the football, and Flinner said like it's nearly 50-50 now in Fingallians hurling and football, whereas he didn't see that in his time, you know. So it's great. It's great.
It's good. It's good. Like Fingallians have about 100 teams with over about 3,000 members. They're well able to be competitive.
Neighbours' ears out there.
Yeah. And we're coming for them.
When you can rattle off how many members they have, etc., yeah, you know they're neighbours, all right. Neighbours.
Massive game, Mike, in the Joe McDonagh. I think we all kind of are half expecting a Laois Carlow final at this stage. There's games to go, obviously. But I think the Westmeath down match is a massive match at the bottom. You know, Westmeath are in no form, down after a brilliant league, have kind of fallen off a cliff. I think this is a huge game. It's a game I'd love we could see. You know, just I don't think the Joe McDonagh gets his fair share of coverage, to be honest. Like, we'll see the final. You know, where I think it's our secondary coming. I think we have a great system in hurling. We're lucky. I mean, the confusion over draws and the football. I'm not going to get into football hurling now, but you know, before the Leinster or the Munster final, Leinster final, Ulster final, and Connacht final are played, we had the draws for the groups. That's a distraction, isn't it? And we grand system in hurling where, you know, there's 5 divisions, and bit of an argument here last night that it should be called the senior or the intermediate hurling All Ireland. And I said, what? Joe McDonagh was a mighty man, and Christy Ring certainly was a mighty man, and so was Nicky Rackard and Lowry Maher. And you know, I think we have a great system.
We have a great system until Kerry win the Joe McDonagh. Then I'll be interested to see how good a system we have.
Well, yeah, and I'd have a bit of graw for Kerry hurling as well, and Tweaky. John Griffin is the manager now, but he's in transition. I mean, he's lost his best player to Kilkenny.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's one as well. Did you see a Kerry hurler making the Kilkenny team?
I know, yeah.
Taking the freeze?
Yeah, he's great. Fionnan's a really good player. And I just think we have a good, we have two conferences.
I can't understand how they couldn't find a job for Fionnan in Cork, Dalo.
There's no way to get into your forward line, Rory.
Before we go, just a quick mention. It looks like, Rory, we have peace in our time in the Scort controversy. The Camogie Association have announced they're going to hold a special congress on the 22nd of May, where there'll be a motion to give players the choice of wearing a skirt or a short or shorts, which is great. As I said to someone before we came on air, it'd be some crack if the motion didn't pass, because it didn't pass the last time it was brought to a congress. Feels
like common sense just prevailing there, which is great. Yeah. And I think it's been a huge distraction, and it's again just something. It's very hard to keep girls playing any sport. I see it every day. It's very hard to keep them playing any sport. So anything that puts a barrier to that just needs to be removed immediately. It's to me, it's that simple.
Rory, whatever way I was driving out from Kilrush yesterday, because I have to drive in now to Kilrush because where we live, but the bowled and the great Aisling Thompson came on, and she said, we'll be playing the Munster final, and if we're not allowed to wear shorts, they can have it. And I think Niamh Rocket came out as well from Waterford and said, well, no, we're not playing either. And that's what it takes.
Yeah, that's it. That's
all.
And
they know if there's girls out there who actually quite like the fashion sense of it and they want to wear a skirt, so be it. Absolutely. If you want to choose
their matching, sure, we don't care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Madness.
And hurlers should be given the if they want to wear a skirt, they should be able to wear a skirt as well, because this is
2025, Mikey. 2025,
exactly. It is indeed.
You wouldn't be doing it in Ennis on Sunday now, though.
No place for skirts.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Dalo, enjoy the matches this weekend, even the Leinster ones, and if you remember, you can watch that match go away.
It's great. It's great, Mikey. I can imagine Ennis 6 o'clock throwing. We haven't had too many Saturday night games. Yeah, I can go back a long time now. I don't remember one on a Saturday night, and we're waiting for the floodlights for those league games to come on a Saturday night. But 6 o'clock on Saturday evening in Ennis, and you can tip along to a couple of nice establishments around the town and watch Galway Wexford, and I think it's great. I think it's we are doing we give out a bit, but we do a lot of things right as well, and this is one of them.
Okay, thanks Dalo, thanks Rory. Follow all the matches on the RT website, RT News app, News Now app, RT Saturday Sport and Sunday Sport will keep you across them, and there are those 3 televised matches. Do please follow the podcast or subscribe or whatever, and unsubscribe from Dalo's one. No, am I messing? Dalo's one's good too.
You get the paper and everything. You get it. It's all for nothing.
I still subscribe, Dalo, so you're all right.
Well, you're Cork. You're one of the...
I should be getting it free.
Paper. Cheers, lads.
Thank you, Dalo. Thank you, Rory. And we'll chat to you all again. Good luck. Bye.
And there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.